The morning sun reflected off the massive hull of the SS Horizon as it sat docked at Station Kepler 9. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the loading platform, watching his crew prepare for another long journey through space. He had been running cargo ships for 15 years now, and he knew every sound, every vibration, every quirk of his vessel. Jake was a tall man with graying hair at his temples and weathered hands that showed years of hard work. He had started as a simple deckhand on Earth cargo ships before humanity had reached the stars. Now he commanded one of the largest human freight vessels in operation. His first mate, Lisa Grant, walked up beside him with a data pad in her hands. She was a sharp woman in her 30s with red hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Lisa had served with Jake for 8 years and he trusted her judgment completely. "Captain, we have a problem," Lisa said, her voice calm but concerned. "The cargo manifest just got updated. We're taking on passengers." Jake raised an eyebrow. "Passengers? We're a cargo ship, not a cruise liner." "They're not regular passengers," Lisa explained. "They're observers from the galactic commerce zones. Some kind of inspection or study. The company says we have to take them," Jake sighed. He had heard about this. The alien species that made up the Galactic Confederation had been watching human shipping operations with growing interest and skepticism. They thought human methods were old-fashioned and dangerous. Now they wanted to see for themselves. "How many observers?" Jake asked. "2," Lisa replied. "One is called Clicking Wisdom. It's a thraz, one of those insect-like aliens. The other is Wavesong, a Narration. You know, the water breathers." Jake nodded slowly. "Well, I guess we'll show them how humans get things done." "When do they arrive?" "In about an hour," Lisa said. "I'll make sure the guest quarters are ready." As Lisa walked away, Jake turned to look at his ship. The SS Horizon was not the newest or the fastest vessel in the fleet, but it was reliable. The hull was scarred from years of service, and the engines were an older fusion model that most alien species had abandoned decades ago. But Jake loved this ship. It had never let him down. Down in the engine room, Danny Brooks was already at work. Danny was the chief engineer, a stocky man in his 40s who could fix anything with the right tools and enough time. He was checking the fuel systems and making sure everything was running smoothly before departure. "Hey, Danny," called out a voice from above. It was Sophie Turner, the ship's navigator. She climbed down the metal ladder into the engine room, her blonde hair falling around her shoulders. Sophie was young, only 26, but she was the best navigator Jake had ever worked with. "What brings you down to my kingdom?" Danny asked with a grin, wiping grease from his hands. "Just checking if we're ready to go," Sophie said. "I heard we're taking on some alien guests." Danny shrugged. "Let them watch. Maybe they'll learn something about real engineering instead of relying on computers for everything." In the cargo bay, Kevin Palmer was supervising the loading of the final containers. Kevin was the cargo specialist, responsible for making sure everything was properly secured and balanced. He was a careful man who never cut corners. Even when it meant extra work, the cargo bay was enormous, large enough to hold hundreds of containers filled with goods from Earth. There were medical supplies, farming equipment, electronics, and thousands of other items heading to the colony world of New Terra. Each container had to be locked down perfectly, or it could shift during flight and cause serious problems. An hour later, Jake stood at the airlock as the alien observers boarded his ship. The first to enter was Clicking Wisdom, and Jake had to stop himself from staring. The thraz stood on 6 legs with a body covered in dark purple chitin that gleamed under the station lights. Multiple eyes studied Jake with what seemed like disapproval. When it spoke, the translator device around its neck turned the clicking sounds into words. "I am Clicking Wisdom, representative of the Galactic Maritime Commission," the alien said. "I am here to observe and document your operations." "Welcome aboard," Jake said, extending his hand. The thraz looked at his hand for a moment before touching it briefly with one of its forward appendages. The second observer, Wavesong, glided forward on a hovering water-filled suit that allowed the aquatic alien to move in normal atmosphere. Through the transparent material, Jake could see a being that looked somewhat like an earth dolphin but with arms and fingers. The Narration's skin was blue-green and seemed to shimmer. "Thank you for having us, Captain Morrison," Wavesong said, her voice melodic even through the translator. "We are very curious about human shipping methods." Lisa showed the observers to their quarters while Jake made his way to the bridge. The control center of the SS Horizon was not fancy compared to alien ships. There were manual controls, physical switches, and screens that displayed information in simple formats. Most alien vessels were controlled entirely by artificial intelligence, with minimal crew input needed. Sophie was already at her navigation station, plotting their course to New Terra. Danny called up from the engine room to report that all systems were ready. Kevin confirmed that the cargo was secured. Lisa took her position at the first mate station. "All right, everyone," Jake said, settling into the captain's chair. "Let's get this boat moving." The observers had been given seats at the back of the bridge where they could watch everything. Jake noticed them looking around with what seemed like confusion and concern. He knew what they were thinking. Where were the AI systems? Where was the automation? How could such a small crew handle such a large ship? Jake smiled to himself. They would learn soon enough. Kepler 9 Control. This is SS Horizon requesting departure clearance. Lisa spoke into the communication system. Horizon, you are cleared for departure. Safe travels, came the reply. Sophie's fingers moved over her controls. Course plotted and locked in, Captain. Danny, how are those engines? Jake asked. Purring like kittens, Captain. Danny's voice came through the intercom. Ready when you are. Then let's go, Jake said. Release docking clamps. There was a series of metallic clanks as the clamps holding the ship to the station disengaged. Jake activated the maneuvering thrusters, and the SS Horizon slowly pulled away from Kepler 9. The station grew smaller behind them as they moved toward open space. Once they were clear of the station's traffic zone, Jake gave the order. Sophie, take us to jump speed. Engaging main engines, Sophie replied. The ship vibrated slightly as the fusion engines came to full power. The stars outside began to stream past as the horizon accelerated. They would spend the next 30 days traveling through normal space to reach New Terra. It was not the fastest way to travel, but it was reliable and safe. Jake glanced back at the alien observers. They were watching everything intently, making notes on their devices. Clicking Wisdom's multiple eyes tracked every movement of the crew. Wavesong seemed particularly interested in the manual controls. Captain Morrison, Clicking Wisdom said, its translator making the words sound formal. May I ask why your vessel does not use standard automation protocols? Jake leaned back in his chair. Because when something breaks in the middle of space, I want a crew that can fix it. Computers are great until they stop working. My people know how to run this ship with their own hands and their own minds. The Thruz made a clicking sound that the translator did not convert. Jake suspected it was skepticism. You will see, Jake said simply. 30 days is a long time. Plenty can happen. As the SS Horizon settled into its journey, the crew went about their normal routines. Lisa monitored the ship's systems. Sophie kept track of their course and made minor adjustments. Danny ran constant checks on the engines. Kevin inspected the cargo bay regularly. The alien observers watched it all, documenting everything they saw. They did not yet understand what they were witnessing. They saw primitive technology and manual labor where they expected efficiency and automation. But Jake Morrison knew something they did not. The real test was still to come. Space had a way of challenging everyone who dared to travel through it, and when that challenge arrived, the observers would learn what it truly meant to be part of a human crew. The SS Horizon pushed forward through the darkness of space, carrying its cargo, its crew, and its skeptical guests toward whatever waited ahead in the vast unknown. On the 15th day of their journey, the alarms woke everyone from their sleep. Jake was out of bed and running toward the bridge before he was fully awake. His bare feet slapped against the cold metal floor as he pulled on his uniform jacket. When he burst through the bridge door, he found Lisa already at her station, her face illuminated by the red emergency lights. What have we got? Jake asked, sliding into his chair. Plasma storm, Lisa said, her voice tight. A big one. It appeared on sensors about 10 minutes ago. It's directly in our path. Sophie was running calculations at her navigation station. The ship's AI is recommending a detour. 3 days minimum to go around it safely. Jake studied the display showing the massive storm system ahead. Plasma storms were dangerous, filled with radiation, electromagnetic chaos, and gravitational distortions. Ships that entered them without proper shielding often never came out. 3 more days added to our journey, Jake said quietly. That puts us 9 days behind schedule overall. Danny's voice came through the intercom. Captain, I'm seeing something else on the sensors. There's a ship caught in the storm's edge. It's transmitting a distress signal. Jake felt his blood run cold. Can you identify it? Give me a second, Danny replied. A moment later, he came back on. It's a small courier vessel. Design matches Narration registry. Looks like they got caught when the storm expanded suddenly. Wavesong rushed onto the bridge, moving quickly in her water suit. Did you say a Narration ship? Yes, Lisa confirmed. They're trapped in the outer bands of the storm. Their shields are failing. Clicking Wisdom arrived right behind Wavesong. This is unfortunate, but there is nothing to be done. You must report their position and continue around the storm. Rescue vessels will be dispatched. How long until rescue arrives? Jake asked. There was a pause. Then Wavesong spoke, her voice small. At least 48 hours. Perhaps longer, given the storm's interference with communications. Jake looked at the display. Their shields won't last that long, will they? Wavesong's silence was answer enough. Galactic maritime law is clear, Clicking Wisdom said firmly. You must render aid when safe to do so. But entering that storm is not safe. Your vessel lacks the proper shielding technology. You would be committing suicide. Jake stood up and moved closer to the display. He could see the small ship, just a blip on the screen, caught in the swirling chaos of the plasma storm. Behind him, his crew had gathered on the bridge. Sophie, Danny, Kevin, they all knew what he was thinking. How many people on that courier ship? Jake asked. Danny checked his sensors, reading 23 life signs. 23 people, Jake repeated quietly. He thought of his own crew, of the trust they placed in him. He thought of those people trapped in that ship, watching their shields fail, knowing they had less than 2 days before the radiation killed them. He turned to look at his crew. We can't reach them safely. Our shields are not designed for plasma storms. We could lose the ship, lose the cargo, lose everything. Nobody spoke. They all knew the stakes. But we're the only ship that can reach them in time, Jake continued. If we don't try, 23 people die. So I'm going to ask you all something, and I want honest answers. Should we try? Danny spoke first. I can redirect power to the forward shields. Not perfect, but it might be enough. Sophie nodded. I can plot a course through the thinnest section of the storm. It will be rough, but navigable. Kevin stepped forward. The cargo is secure. I can add additional magnetic locks, make sure nothing shifts no matter how much we get thrown around. Lisa smiled. I'll coordinate with the distressed vessel. Keep communication lines open. Jake looked at each of them. These people who trusted him enough to fly into a plasma storm. Then he turned to the alien observers. You two should get to the emergency shelter. This is going to be dangerous. Clicking Wisdom's multiple eyes seemed to study Jake for a long moment. You are actually going to do this. You are going to risk everything to save strangers. That's what the law says, Jake replied. Render aid when possible. We're making it possible. Wavesong's voice was filled with emotion. Captain Morrison, those are my people on that ship. But Clicking Wisdom is right. This is incredibly dangerous. Your ship was not built for this. Maybe not, Jake said. But my crew was. Get to shelter, both of you. We're going in. The next hour was a flurry of activity. Danny worked like a man possessed, rerouting every spare bit of power to the forward shields. He pulled energy from non-essential systems, from comfort controls, from lighting in empty sections. The ship grew darker and colder as all available power focused on protection. In the cargo bay, Kevin and 2 other crew members worked to secure everything. They added extra magnetic locks to every container, ran additional cables, and double-checked every connection. If cargo broke loose during the storm, it could punch through interior walls and kill everyone aboard. On the bridge, Sophie plotted and replotted their course through the storm. She studied the sensor readings, looking for the path of least resistance. The storm was constantly changing, but there were patterns if you knew how to look for them. I've got a route, Sophie finally announced. It's narrow, and we'll need to make constant adjustments, but it's our best shot. Lisa had established communication with the distressed Narration vessel. Their captain was a woman named Current Song, and her voice was steady despite the fear behind it. Horizon, we cannot believe you are attempting this, Current Song said. Your ship is not equipped for plasma storms. We're equipped with a good crew, Lisa replied. Stay with us, Current Song. We're coming to get you. Jake stood in the center of the bridge watching his crew work. They moved with practiced efficiency, each person knowing their role perfectly. This was what years of training and experience created. Not panic, not hesitation. Just focused action. "Captain," Sophie said, "we need to go now. The storm is expanding. If we wait any longer, the window closes." Jake sat down in his chair and gripped the armrests. "All hands, brace for storm entry. Danny, give me everything the shields have got." "Shields at maximum, Captain." Danny's voice came back. "But I'm going to be honest with you. This is going to hurt." "Sophie, take us in," Jake ordered. The SS Horizon turned toward the plasma storm and accelerated. The swirling mass of energy grew larger on the view screen, filling it with chaotic light and color. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The first impact felt like the ship had hit a wall. Everyone was thrown forward against their restraints. The lights flickered. Alarms began to sound from a dozen different systems. "Shields holding," Danny reported. "But we're taking a beating." "Temperature rising in Section 7 and 8, Lisa called out. "Hull stress at 60%. Sophie's hands flew over her controls, making constant micro-adjustments to their course. 30 seconds to the thickest part. "Hold on." Jake watched as his ship pushed deeper into the storm. Lightning-like energy discharges hit their shields, creating brilliant flashes. The entire vessel shook and groaned. He could hear the hull plates straining against forces they were never designed to handle. "Shield strength at 70%, Danny said. 65%. 60%. "Come on, girl," Jake whispered to his ship. "Hold together." An especially violent jolt threw them all sideways. Jake heard something snap somewhere in the ship. More alarms added their voices to the chaos. "Hull breach in Section 12, Lisa shouted, sealing it off. "We're through the worst of it," Sophie called out. 20 seconds to the courier ship. The Horizon burst through the thickest part of the storm into a relatively calm pocket, where the Nereidi vessel drifted helplessly. Jake could see it now on the view screen, small and fragile looking. "Kevin, you're up," Jake said into the intercom. "Get out there and attach the tow cables." "On my way, Captain," Kevin replied. What Kevin was about to do was either very brave or very crazy, possibly both. He was going to perform a spacewalk in the middle of a plasma storm to attach physical tow cables to the distressed ship. One wrong move, one moment of bad luck, and the radiation would kill him. On the bridge, everyone watched the external cameras as Kevin emerged from the airlock. He wore the heaviest protective suit they had, but it would only buy him minutes in this environment. He moved with careful speed, magnetic boots locking him to the hull as he made his way to the tow cable attachment point. "Kevin, how are you doing?" Lisa asked over the radio. "Living the dream." Kevin's voice came back, strained but attempting humor. "Attaching first cable now." It took 4 minutes that felt like hours. Kevin worked methodically, attaching the heavy cables that would allow the Horizon to pull the smaller ship to safety. In the background, the storm continued to rage, and Jake knew they were running out of time. "Last cable secure," Kevin finally reported, getting back inside. "Sophie, as soon as Kevin is aboard, get us out of here," Jake ordered. "Course plotted, Captain. It's going to be rough going back out." "It was rough coming in," Jake said. "We can handle it." Kevin made it back through the airlock, and Sophie immediately started pulling the Horizon and its tow out of the storm. The ship shuddered and complained, now dragging extra weight through the chaos. "Shield strength at 40%, Danny said. 35%. "Captain, I don't know if we can make it." "We're making it," Jake said firmly. "Keep those shields up, Danny." 5 days into the journey, everything changed in an instant. Jake was in his quarters reviewing supply reports when the alarm sounded. It was not the loud, panicked wail of a critical emergency, but the steady beeping that meant something had gone wrong. He was on his feet and moving toward the bridge before the second beep finished. Lisa was already there, her hands moving quickly over her console. Sophie stood at the navigation station, her face pale but focused. The alien observers had been summoned as well and stood in the back looking confused. "Report," Jake said as he dropped into his captain's chair. "Micrometeor shower," Lisa said quickly. It came out of nowhere. "No warning on sensors. We took several hits to the forward section." "Damage?" Jake asked. Sophie spoke up, her voice tight. "Primary navigation array is offline. We also lost 3 secondary systems, including backup communications, and part of the environmental controls." Jake felt his stomach tighten, but his face remained calm. This was serious. The navigation array was their eyes in space. Without it, they were flying blind. "Danny, what's your status down there?" Jake called through the intercom. "I'm checking for hull breaches now, Captain." Danny's voice came back. "So far we're holding pressure, but I'm reading power fluctuations in sectors 4 and 5. Clicking Wisdom moved forward, its legs clicking on the metal floor. "Captain Morrison, this is a serious situation. You must immediately call for emergency assistance and halt your journey." "We'll assess the damage first," Jake said calmly. "Lisa, get me a full diagnostic of all systems." Wavesong's voice was worried. "Captain, without your navigation systems, you cannot safely continue. Standard galactic protocol requires that you return to the nearest station or wait for a rescue vessel." Jake looked at the aquatic alien. "How long would that take?" "A rescue ship could reach you in approximately 72 hours, Wavesong replied. 3 days sitting here doing nothing," Jake said. He turned to Lisa. "What do we have to work with?" Lisa pulled up a systems display. "The main array is completely fried. The meteor punched right through it. But we still have the backup sensors and the computer core is undamaged. The problem is connecting them without the primary navigation system." "What about manual navigation?" Sophie asked. "I can plot courses using stellar cartography and the old calculation methods." Clicking Wisdom made a sound of disbelief. "You cannot seriously be considering continuing this journey with manual navigation. That technology has not been used in centuries." "It is unreliable and dangerous," Jake stood up. "Danny, I need you on the bridge." "Kevin, you too. We're going to fix this." 10 minutes later, the crew had gathered. Danny wiped his hands on a rag, leaving grease stains. Kevin carried a toolkit. Sophie had pulled up star charts on her screen. Lisa had a complete inventory of spare parts displayed on her console. "All right, let's think this through," Jake said. "We need to get navigation back online, at least partially. What are our options?" Danny studied the damage reports. "The primary array is toast. No fixing that without a full replacement. But I might be able to rig something using components from other systems." "Which systems?" Jake asked. "The secondary communications array has some compatible parts," Danny said thoughtfully. "And there are sensor modules in the cargo monitoring system that could be adapted. But that would leave us without cargo sensors and limited communications." Lisa pointed out. "We don't need to watch the cargo every second," Kevin said. "I locked everything down personally. It's not going anywhere. And as for communications, we're in deep space. Who are we going to talk to anyway?" Sophie leaned forward. "If Danny can get even basic sensors working, I can navigate us. I've studied the old methods. Dead reckoning, stellar positioning, gravitational readings. Our ancestors crossed oceans with less than what we have." Clicking Wisdom moved closer. "This is madness. You are proposing to cannibalize your own ship and rely on ancient, primitive methods. You will get everyone killed." Jake turned to face the alien observer. "My crew knows this ship inside and out. We train for situations like this. Every human vessel is built with redundancy and repair in mind. We don't give up just because a computer breaks." "You should wait for proper assistance," Wavesong said, though her tone was less certain than Clicking Wisdom's. 3 days waiting turns into 6 days total delay," Jake said. "Our cargo includes medical supplies that people on New Terra need. Time matters. And besides, I trust my crew." He looked at each of his crew members. "Can we do this?" Danny grinned. "Give me 6 hours and a lot of coffee." Sophie nodded. "I'll need to recalibrate everything, but yes, I can navigate." Kevin shrugged. "I'll help Danny with whatever he needs." Lisa smiled. "Then let's get to work." What followed was a display of human ingenuity that left the alien observers stunned. Danny disappeared into the maintenance tunnels with Kevin right behind him. They pulled panels, disconnected systems, and removed components with practiced efficiency. "This part here," Danny said, holding up a circuit board. "This processes sensor data. It's designed for cargo monitoring. But the basic function is the same as what navigation needs. We just need to reprogram it." Kevin was already pulling cables. "What about power routing?" "The navigation array drew more power than the cargo sensors. We'll take power from the secondary environmental systems," Danny said. "We don't need maximum comfort for 30 days. We can run cooler and redirect that energy." On the bridge, Sophie was busy with her own preparations. She pulled up star charts, old navigation tables, and mathematical formulas that most modern navigators never learned. Lisa helped her verify each calculation. "The key is using multiple reference points," Sophie explained to Wavesong, who had moved closer to watch. "I'll track our position using known stars, measure gravitational variations from nearby masses, and use our speed and trajectory to dead reckon between updates. But the margin for error is enormous, Wavesong said. Modern systems are accurate to within meters. Your method could be off by thousands of kilometers. True, Sophie admitted, but space is big. As long as we're pointing in the right general direction and can make corrections, we'll get there. It's how humans explored Earth's oceans for thousands of years. Clicking Wisdom was following Danny and Kevin through the ship, documenting their work. The Thraz watched in fascination as Danny literally rewired the ship's systems, connecting components that were never designed to work together. How do you know this will function? Clicking Wisdom asked. Danny looked up from his work. I don't, not completely, but I know what each part does. I know how electricity flows. I know how to make things work even when they're not supposed to. That's engineering. But there are no instructions for this, the alien said. No manual, no protocol. The manual is in my head, Danny said, tapping his temple. And in my hands. I've been fixing things since I was a kid. My dad taught me that any problem can be solved if you understand the basics and you're willing to try. 6 hours later, just as Danny had promised, the crew gathered on the bridge again. Danny had dark circles under his eyes but a satisfied smile on his face. We've got sensors, he announced. Not as good as the primary array, but good enough. Navigation should have what it needs. Sophie immediately started running tests. Her fingers flew over the controls as she verified readings and compared them to her calculations. After several tense minutes, she looked up. It's working, she said. I can navigate with this. Course corrections will need to be manual, and I'll need to update our position every few hours, but we can do it. Jake felt relief wash over him. Outstanding work, everyone. Lisa, what's our status overall? We're running at about 70% efficiency, Lisa reported. Environmental systems are reduced but adequate. Communications are limited to emergency channels only. Cargo monitoring is offline, but Kevin confirms everything is secure. Most importantly, engines and life support are at full capacity. Jake turned to the alien observers. So, do we wait 3 days for rescue or do we continue our journey? Clicking Wisdom's multiple eyes blinked in what might have been amazement. You actually did it. You repaired your ship using nothing but spare parts and improvisation. That's what humans do, Kevin said proudly. We adapt. Wavesong moved forward in her water suit. I must admit I did not think this was possible. The Galactic Confederation teaches that modern ships are too complex for this kind of field repair. Maybe their ships are, Danny said, but we build things we can fix. We don't trust technology we can't understand. Jake sat back in his captain's chair. Sophie, adjust our course as needed. Let's get back on schedule. Aye, Captain, Sophie replied, her confidence returning. Calculating course corrections now. The SS Horizon resumed its journey, now running on improvised systems and human determination. The alien observers watched with new respect as the crew went about their work. What they had dismissed as primitive was actually something far more valuable. It was resilience. It was adaptability. It was the human refusal to give up when things went wrong. Over the next few days, Sophie navigated using her manual methods. Every few hours she would take readings, compare them to her calculations, and make small adjustments to their course. It was more work than relying on computers, but it worked. Danny continued to monitor his jury-rigged systems. On day 30, the SS Horizon approached New Terra with the rising sun of the colony world painting the hull in golden light. Jake stood on the bridge, watching his destination grow larger on the view screen. Beside him, Lisa ran through the final approach checklist. Sophie guided them along the approved traffic lane with the precision of someone who had navigated through far worse than orbital approach patterns. In the engine room, Danny was coaxing the last bit of performance from systems that had been pushed beyond their limits. New Terra Traffic Control, this is SS Horizon requesting approach clearance. Lisa spoke into the communications array. Horizon, you are cleared for approach to Orbital Station 3. Welcome to New Terra, came the reply. Then, after a pause, Captain Morrison, be advised that you have a welcoming committee waiting. Jake raised an eyebrow. A welcoming committee? Word travels fast, Captain, the traffic controller said, and Jake could hear the smile in his voice. The story of what you did in the plasma storm has been all over the news feeds. The crew of that Narration courier ship has been telling everyone who will listen about the crazy humans who flew into a storm to save them. Lisa grinned. Looks like you're famous, Captain. We're all famous, Jake corrected. This was a team effort. As they guided the Horizon into its docking berth at Orbital Station 3, Jake could see the crowd gathered at the observation windows. There were humans, of course, but also representatives from dozens of alien species. News drones hovered around the ship, capturing footage of its scarred and patched hull. The docking clamps engaged with a solid thunk. After 30 days in space, they had arrived. All systems secured, Sophie announced. We're home. Danny's voice came through the intercom. Captain, I'm shutting down the main engines, and I'm going to sleep for about 3 days straight after this. You've earned it, Danny, Jake replied. Everyone has. Excellent work, all of you. Kevin appeared on the bridge, having finished his final inspection of the cargo bay. Everything's ready for unloading, Captain. Not a single container shifted during the whole journey, even through that storm. Outstanding, Jake said. He turned to look at Clicking Wisdom and Wavesong, who had remained on the bridge for the approach. Well, observers, you've seen a full journey on a human cargo vessel. What do you think? Clicking Wisdom's multiple eyes seemed to study Jake for a long moment. Captain Morrison, I believe you have changed the way I understand space travel. What I have witnessed over these 30 days is not merely transportation of goods. It is a demonstration of philosophy. A philosophy? Lisa asked. The Galactic Confederation has spent centuries perfecting technology to make space travel safe and predictable, Wavesong explained. We have succeeded in many ways. Our ships are fast, efficient, and comfortable. But we have lost something in the process. We have forgotten how to adapt, Clicking Wisdom continued. We have forgotten that space is inherently dangerous and unpredictable. We build systems that work perfectly under ideal conditions, but when those conditions change, we are helpless. Humans never forgot, Wavesong said softly. You build ships expecting things to go wrong. You train crews to handle situations that computers cannot solve. You maintain skills that other species consider obsolete. Jake nodded slowly. Space doesn't care about our technology or our plans. It's going to throw problems at us no matter what. We just decided to be ready for them. And that readiness saved 23 lives, Wavesong said, including many of my own people. For that we are eternally grateful. The airlock cycled open and Jake led his crew into the station. The moment they emerged, they were surrounded by people. Reporters called out questions. Station officials wanted to shake their hands. And there, at the front of the crowd, stood the crew of the Narration courier ship. Current Song approached Jake, her hoversuit allowing her to move gracefully through the crowd. Captain Morrison, we meet face to face at last. Jake extended his hand and she touched it gently with one of her appendages. Current Song, I'm glad to see you made it safely. Because of you, she said. Because of all of you. You risked everything for strangers. In Nariti culture, this creates a debt that can never be fully repaid. But we will spend our lives trying. No debt necessary, Jake said. We did what any ship would do. No, Current Song said firmly. Not any ship. Many ships would have followed protocol and waited for rescue. You did not. You acted with courage and compassion. This is something special. The crowd parted to let through a delegation of New Terra officials. The lead administrator, a tall woman with gray hair, approached with a formal bearing. Captain Morrison, I'm Administrator Helen Price. On behalf of New Terra, I want to thank you for delivering your cargo safely despite the challenges you faced. The medical supplies you're carrying are desperately needed here. Just doing our job, Administrator, Jake said. You did far more than your job, Helen replied. And because of that, New Terra wants to recognize your crew with our Medal of Distinguished Service. All of you. Jake looked back at his crew. Lisa was trying not to smile. Sophie looked embarrassed. Danny was blushing. Kevin just shrugged with a grin. We accept on behalf of all cargo crews everywhere, Jake said. The people who keep supplies moving, who connect colonies to the wider galaxy, and who face the dangers of space every day without recognition. The crowd applauded. Cameras captured the moment. And somewhere in the back of the crowd, Jake noticed other human cargo crews watching with pride in their eyes. They understood. They had all faced similar challenges. They were all part of the same tradition. Later, after the ceremonies and the interviews and the well-wishers had finally dispersed, Jake found himself in a quiet corner of the station's observation deck. He wasn't alone for long. His crew found him one by one, along with Clicking Wisdom and Wavesong. They stood together looking out at the stars. "So," Lisa said, "think they'll give us any easier runs after this?" Danny laughed. "Are you kidding? After that performance, they'll probably send us on all the difficult routes." "Good," Kevin said. "I like a challenge." Sophie was quiet for a moment, then spoke thoughtfully. "You know what I realized during this journey? We didn't do anything special. We just did what we were trained to do. Every cargo crew in the human fleet would have done the same thing." "That's exactly what makes it special," Wavesong said. "You have built an entire culture around resilience and mutual support. Every human ship is prepared for the worst. Every human crew knows how to adapt. This is not common in the galaxy. I have been composing my report to the Galactic Maritime Commission," Clicking Wisdom said. "I will recommend several things. First, that human shipping methods be officially recognized as valid and valuable. Second, that other species consider adopting some human approaches to redundancy and crew training. Third, that the Confederation establish an exchange program to allow alien crews to learn from human cargo operations." "You want to send people to learn from us?" Jake asked, surprised. "I want to ensure that what I have learned here is not lost," Clicking Wisdom replied. "Your methods have value that goes beyond simple efficiency. They represent a way of thinking about space travel that could benefit everyone." "I have a request as well," Wavesong said. "When you return to regular service, Captain Morrison, I would like to join your crew. I want to learn more about human methods, and I want to serve aboard a ship where I know I will always be in capable hands." Jake looked at the aquatic alien with surprise and respect. "You want to sign on as a crew member?" "If you will have me," Wavesong said. "I am a qualified navigator in galactic vessels. I believe Sophie could teach me to be a qualified navigator on a human vessel as well." Sophie smiled. "I'd be happy to have you." "Then welcome aboard," Jake said. "We launch again in 3 months. Be ready for another adventure." Clicking Wisdom made a sound that might have been laughter. "I must return to my duties with the Commission, but I will be following the Horizon's future journeys with great interest. I suspect you have not seen the last of danger, Captain Morrison." "Probably not," Jake agreed. "But that's fine. We'll handle whatever comes." Over the next few days, the cargo was unloaded and the repairs to the Horizon began. The ship would need weeks of work to undo the damage from the plasma storm. But Jake had no doubt that Danny and his team would have her flying like new again. Word of their journey spread beyond New Terra. News feeds across human space and even in alien territories carried the story. The cargo ship that flew into a plasma storm. The human crew that saved 23 lives. The vessel held together by improvisation and determination. Other human cargo captains reached out to Jake, sharing their own stories of challenges overcome and dangers faced. He realized that the SS Horizon's journey was not unique. It was just one story among thousands, all of them demonstrating the same human traits: adaptability, courage, and an unwillingness to give up when things got hard. But it was the story that got told, and in being told, it changed something. Alien species began to look at human cargo operations differently. The Galactic Maritime Commission opened investigations into human methods, not to criticize them but to learn from them. Exchange programs were established. Human expertise became valued. On the day before he was scheduled to return to Earth for his leave, the days following the rescue were different aboard the SS Horizon. The ship was wounded but still flying, making its way steadily toward New Terra. The crew worked constantly to repair the damage, but there was time now for something else as well: understanding. On day 20, Jake found Clicking Wisdom in the engine room with Danny. The Thraz was bent over a disassembled power coupling, its multiple appendages carefully examining each component. Danny stood nearby explaining something while gesturing with a wrench. "You see, this coupling is designed to fail safely," Danny was saying. "If it gets overloaded, it breaks here at this specific point. That prevents damage from spreading to more important systems. Clicking Wisdom's translator clicked for a moment before responding. This is intentional weakness built into the design. Not weakness, Danny corrected. It's a sacrifice point. We lose one cheap part instead of an expensive system. It's smart engineering. Jake watched as the alien carefully manipulated the coupling with surprising delicacy. Over the past week, Clicking Wisdom had become a regular visitor to the engine room. At first, Danny had been suspicious of the constant questions. Now he seemed to enjoy having someone genuinely interested in his work. Human engineering philosophy is different from what I was taught, Clicking Wisdom said. Galactic standard is to make every component as strong as possible, then use computer systems to monitor and prevent failures. And what happens when the computer fails? Danny asked. The computer rarely fails. It is the most protected system on any vessel. Danny laughed. Everything fails eventually. Out here in space, far from any repair station, I'd rather have a simple system I can fix with basic tools than a perfect system I can't do anything about when it breaks. Clicking Wisdom was quiet for a moment. I am beginning to see the wisdom in this approach. When your navigation array was destroyed, you were able to reconstruct functionality using unrelated components. A galactic standard ship would have been helpless. That's because galactic ships are built by engineers who trust technology more than people, Danny said. We build ships for people to fix. Every system has multiple ways to access it, multiple ways to repair it, and multiple backup options that don't rely on the same technology. Jake left them to their discussion and made his way to the bridge. He found Sophie at her navigation station, with Wave Song's water suit positioned nearby. The two of them were studying star charts. The key is having reference points, Sophie was explaining. Before computers, human navigators used something called a sextant to measure the angle between stars and the horizon. In space, we do something similar. We measure angles between known stars and calculate our position from those measurements. But this requires extensive knowledge of stellar positions, Wavesong observed, and constant calculations. It does, Sophie agreed. But it also means I'm never completely dependent on instruments. If every computer on this ship died right now, I could still get us home. It might take longer and it wouldn't be as accurate, but I could do it. Wavesong's form shifted in her water suit. A gesture Jake had learned meant she was thinking deeply. Galactic navigators train for years on computer systems, but most of us could not navigate without them. It's a trade-off, Sophie said. Your way is faster and more precise. Our way is more resilient. Both have value. I wonder, Wavesong said slowly, if we have perhaps traded too much. We have gained efficiency but lost capability. Sophie smiled. You're still capable. You just need to learn the skills. I could teach you the basics if you're interested. I would like that very much, Wavesong replied. Over the following days, the bridge became an informal classroom. Sophie taught Wavesong the fundamentals of manual navigation. They started simple, with basic angle measurements and position plotting. Wavesong proved to be a quick learner, her mathematical mind adapting rapidly to the old techniques. In the mess hall, Jake found Kevin having lunch with both alien observers. The cargo specialist was showing them pictures on his datapad. This is my daughter, Kevin said, his voice warm with pride. She's 8 now. Wants to be a ship engineer like her dad. You have a family on Earth? Wavesong asked. Does it not trouble you to be away from them for such long periods? Kevin's expression became thoughtful. Of course it does. I miss them every day. But this is how I provide for them. This is how I make sure my daughter has opportunities I never had. Every cargo run means she can go to better schools, have a better life. Galactic crew members typically serve shorter rotations, Clicking Wisdom said. 3 to 4 weeks maximum before extended leave periods. That sounds nice, Kevin admitted. But human ships need smaller crews to be profitable. We do longer runs with more time between them. I'll be home for 3 months after this trip. That's 3 months where I don't miss a single day with my family. How do you maintain ship efficiency with such small crews? Clicking Wisdom asked. Cross-training, Kevin replied. Every person on this ship can do at least 2 jobs. I'm primarily cargo, but I can also handle basic mechanical repairs and emergency medical. Danny can navigate if Sophie is incapacitated. Sophie can run cargo operations. We're not specialists. We're generalists. This seems inefficient, Clicking Wisdom observed. Until something goes wrong, Kevin said. Then having people who can adapt and fill multiple roles is the most efficient thing in the universe. That evening, Jake gathered everyone in the common area for dinner. It had become a tradition on the horizon to share at least one meal together every day. It built camaraderie and gave everyone a chance to talk about something other than work. The alien observers had been invited to join them from the start, but initially they had observed more than participated. Now, on day 22 of the journey, they sat among the crew as if they belonged there. Lisa had cooked, which always made for an interesting meal. She believed in experimentation, and her cooking was either brilliant or terrible with no middle ground. Tonight she had made something she called fusion stew, a combination of ingredients from Earth, New Terra, and several alien worlds. "This is actually good," Danny said, sounding surprised. "Yeah, of little faith," Lisa replied with a grin. Wavesong tried a small amount through her suit's feeding port. "The flavors are complex. Narration cuisine is typically much simpler." "Humans like variety," Sophie said. "We get bored eating the same things." "Your entire species seems built on variety and adaptation," Clicking Wisdom observed. "You come from a world with extreme environmental differences. Deserts, frozen regions, jungles, oceans. Your evolution forced you to adapt to many different conditions." "Never thought about it that way," Danny said. "But yeah, humans spread all over Earth. We learned to live pretty much anywhere." "And now you bring that adaptability to space," Wavesong added. "You build ships that can operate in diverse conditions with minimal support. You train crews to handle multiple situations. You create systems with redundancy and backup options. It's just common sense to us," Jake said, "but I'm starting to realize it might be uniquely human." The conversation flowed naturally, moving from topic to topic. The aliens asked questions about Earth, about human history, about why humans did things the way they did. The crew answered honestly, sometimes realizing things about themselves they had never articulated before. "Tell me about the oceans," Wavesong said. "You mentioned that human space travel evolved from ocean travel," Kevin spoke up. "Humans have been going to sea for thousands of years. Long before we had good technology, we were building boats and sailing to places we couldn't even see from shore." "Why?" Clicking Wisdom asked. "What drove you to take such risks?" "Curiosity," Sophie said. "Trade. The desire to see what was beyond the horizon. Humans have always wanted to explore." "But the oceans are dangerous," Wavesong said. "Many species with oceans on their world stayed close to shore until they developed reliable technology." "Dangerous, yeah," Danny agreed. "But that didn't stop us. We learned to read the weather, to understand currents and tides. We built better ships through trial and error. A lot of people died learning these lessons." "And that's why we have traditions," Lisa added. "Every sailor has to help another sailor in trouble. That's maritime law, and it goes back thousands of years. It's not just about following rules. It's about understanding that we're all in this together, fighting against the sea or fighting against space." Jake nodded. "When we rescued that Naradi courier ship, we weren't being heroes. We were following the oldest law humans have for traveling dangerous places. You don't leave people to die when you can help them." Wavesong's voice was soft. "Current Song told me what you did in detail. She said your ship was seconds from critical failure when you cleared the storm. You could have died saving us, but we didn't," Jake said simply. "And 23 people are alive because we tried." Later that night, Jake found himself on the observation deck with Clicking Wisdom. The Thraz had become fond of this quiet space where you could see the stars without any obstruction. "Captain Morrison," Clicking Wisdom said, "I must admit something to you. When I boarded your vessel, I expected to document human inadequacy. I was certain that human methods were primitive and dangerous. And now?" Jake asked. "Now I understand that what I perceived as primitive is actually sophisticated in ways I did not recognize.